you can charge 4% on like a luxury listing and offer the buyer's agent 2%. Everyone's totally cool with that.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, it's a lot of money. We're good. We're doing our job.
Yeah.
It's not a slap in the face. You don't always need to charge 6. You don't always need to charge. Sometimes you need to charge a lot more.
Yep.
Sometimes you need to charge a lot less.
Yep.
It depends on the quality of service that you're providing and what people are comfortable with, what you agree on, because everything's negotiable in this world.
Right.
You're checking out the Investor Shed podcast with Nick Beveridge and Jeremy Kitchen. They're on the path to financial freedom, and they're taking their community with them. Stay tuned for the best free real estate investing advice on the internet.
Hello and welcome to the Investor Shed podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeremy Kitchen, here with my lovely and beautiful flannel-wearing shirt, Nick Beveridge, host.
Hi, Jeremy. What are you doing today?
Oh, I'm just trying to do some ASMR in the microphone.
I like that ASMR.
Speaking of ASMR, we've got an episode today about NAR.
Ooh.
Which is not the same, but pretty close if you think about it.
National Association of Realtors talk. That's what we're talking about today.
Yeah, we're talking all about that juicy lawsuit and the juicy details.
For a little bit, and then we talk about homeownership mostly.
I really enjoyed this episode, Nick. I thought we had good flavor. I thought you brought very good points to the table. You're passionate about what you do, and I think that really shows through in the episode. And you should definitely stay to the end because it's a great episode. Speaking of great episodes, though, like what should people be eating or what should people be drinking to indulge themselves in the listening or viewing experience of this episode?
Oh, you know what? I would say just make some spaghetti.
Okay.
Yeah, spaghetti with, I love meatballs, but put them on the side. You can throw the meatballs later.
Interesting take on spaghetti.
Yeah, just eat the spaghetti.
Whenever I put meat in spaghetti sauce, I always put it in the sauce. I'm not like baking meat and putting it on the side.
Oh, well, meatballs on the side because then you can use your hands.
There's no rule that says you can't use your hands with spaghetti. I do it all the time.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. So do I. I just try not to admit it.
I make spaghetti burritos. That's handheld spaghetti.
Well, now that we're being open about this, I always use my hands when I'm eating spaghetti. I was just like easing into it with the meatballs there.
Gotcha.
But I guess I'm out of the closet.
Yep. Avid spaghetti eaters with our hands and investors, come take a look at the episode. You're not going to want to miss it.
We guarantee it. Kinda. If you guys are watching on YouTube, you'll get to see funny things on our faces.
They're so funny.
Oh, we're so silly.
Oh yeah, we look like Alex Hormozy, but nowhere close to him at the same time. It's pretty cool.
We're wearing breathe strips on our noses, and it feels wild. I've never put one of these on before, and I feel like I can talk slightly than I ever have before.
You sound like you can talk better to me as well. This episode's not sponsored by these. I just started wearing them, and my wife doesn't want to murder me for snoring anymore, so I've started wearing them in the day.
Yeah, I have this thing where like my nose is almost always clogged.
Yeah.
And people almost always think I have a cold. They're like, "Oh, you sick today?" I'm like, "No, this is just the way I sound." And I can barely ever breathe through, one nostril.
Yeah. I can get to the link.
I'm excited to see how this works.
Yeah, but we're not going to talk about breathing strips today, Nick. Today we're going to be talking about realtor lawsuits.
Oh my gosh, that affects me.
That does affect you
and you.
A lot of people actually.
Yeah, a lot more than you're going to think.
Mm-hmm.
So. I wanted to bring this up because everybody's talking about it, and I haven't really made a video on it for a while at all yet. I mean, it's been kind of a big thing in the news for about a month now,
right?
Because I didn't want to put anything out there that like maybe was factually incorrect. So I just kind of heard a lot of cool misinformation over the last few weeks, and I thought maybe we should address a little bit of it for those that actually care about housing and how the whole operation of using a realtor works in America.
And just for clarity, this process has been going on for a while. I'm sure we're going to deep dive into actually the origins of how this actually started on the podcast, but this has not been something that's just popped up. Realtors have been aware of this for a while. At least if you have your head in the industry, you should have been aware of this, of the changes that were happening in the lawsuit that was pending. So,
yeah. And but to be honest with you, 99% of the people out there that heard about this lawsuit when it started up years ago. We just ignored it because it was ridiculous.
Right.
And this is why, because what we heard was a group of sellers are getting together and they're selling, or they're going to sue a bunch of brokerages and the National Association of Realtors and all the big companies out there, because they sold their houses, but they weren't like they claimed that they weren't super aware that they had to pay a buyer's agent. They weren't paying anything extra that they didn't already agree to.
Right.
They just didn't take the time to look at the contract, I guess, and they didn't fully understand. Oh, wait, I'm paying a buyer's agent too? Yeah, read your contract. And how do you expect realtors to come, bring you buyers if somebody's not going to pay for that?
Right.
But anyway, common sense is not a thing in America anymore. And we're all entitled, which is fine.
Yep.
That's just the way things are. And I guess we'll just get on the bandwagon of full entitlements.
Yeah.
So I'm in.
Yeah.
Man, everything should be free. Everything. That's what makes this country great, right?
No.
Oh, wait, why?
This is a very deep issue to unpack, but like, where does the money come from if it's free? Like, nothing's free. You say everything's free, like nothing is free.
Well, people don't want to pay agents anymore.
Right.
It should be free.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, let's dive into this. Why should it be free?
Well, I'm confused now because the news is saying that, commissions are going to go through, down like crazy. It's going to bring prices down. And I'm excited for that. I'm excited for real estate prices to come down now that agents aren't going to be so shady anymore. And now that they're not going to get their anyway, sorry, I'm confusing a lot of people because it's a very confusing time.
Right.
And it's hilarious to me.
Yeah.
But what actually happened was a whole bunch of brokerages and the National Association of Realtors all of a sudden just started settling.
Yep.
And when they settled, they're kind of, I guess, admitting guilt.
Yeah, admitting guilt is typically
way?
Like if you're in any sort of a lawsuit, settling, it means one of two things. Like that, one, you don't have time to deal with this because going through a lawsuit is a strenuous process as it is. I wouldn't say they're admittedly admitting guilt, but I could be perceived as that way for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, they're just, they're paying out big settlements. And the one thing that is going to change is that the big brokerages, Keller Williams Realty, Coldwell Banker, Century 21, those big companies, those are real estate brokerages that have real estate agents as independent contractors. But what made all the big news was that the National Association of Realtors, this is a membership that a lot of that any and all realtors have to subscribe to,
right,
to have access to the MLS, the multiple listing service. And that's where we put our inventory on the market for anybody in the world to view. And anybody who's a realtor can come bring a contract and represent a buyer, and they're going to get paid for doing so. And it was a very complex, but very kind of simple. Like you didn't have to, when it all kind of comes together and it's managed by this like highly, regulated system, all of a sudden realtors don't really have to worry so much about getting paid when they're working with buyers, because if it's on the MLS, they're going to get paid.
Right.
It's not always 3%.
Nope.
It's not always 2%. Sometimes it's $500. It doesn't matter, but it was listed on the MLS for them to see how much does this listing pay, just like a bounty.
Yep.
You bring us a buyer, you get paid this much. Seems reasonable, but apparently not anymore. Now, the reason why they want to and have agreed to take this away, because the public perception was that realtors in general, and I've got to agree with them, some do, but in general, realtors will persuade people to go with one house versus another because maybe one house pays more.
Interesting. Okay.
And that was the perception that got adopted by the masses, that yes, we've got to turn this machine off. They've got to make some serious changes here, because yes, there are some bad apples out there that may persuade or try to not show certain listings, and those are called idiot agents that don't do well, because there are some out there that focus on themselves first and not their clients. and they may not want to show a listing, but like the reality is, and I've been doing this 14 years now, the inventory is not in secret books anymore.
No.
Like when my dad was selling real estate in the 90s,
Yeah.
he was showing properties and he had maybe the option to maybe persuade people to go to this or that because they weren't looking online at, oh, this house down the street's available.
Right.
That maybe doesn't have a sign up, but it's on Zillow or it's on Realtor.com. I can see right here. Can we go look at this property? No agent in their right mind is going to be like, no, because that one doesn't pay me quite enough.
Yeah. I'm not going to get a big enough paycheck on this.
So let's go look at this other house instead. That doesn't happen in real life, but people think it does.
Right. And to kind of add on to that a little bit, like, obviously, before you go look at a home, the things you should be doing is you should be getting pre-approved to go, find out what's in your freaking budget. Once you do that, like letting your agent know, like, hey, this is what I'm approved for. And they can kind of get you a list compiled starting off of that. So, like, yeah, like what you're saying, Nick, that doesn't happen.
Right. So here's how probably 80-90% of most real estate agents work with buyers. They meet with a buyer. They find out what kind of property that they're looking for. But in most cases, the buyer brings the properties too because they can see them on the internet. Because 90+% of buyers first found their home on the internet and then used an agent to help negotiate and show the property and that kind of stuff. So what happens in most cases is you'll meet with a buyer. You'll kind of get an idea of all the properties that they are interested in, may want to go see, and you'll start getting a list together and you'll start scheduling showings and you'll work with them to facilitate the showings. That's how it normally goes. Now, it is virtually impossible and very stupid to go through each one and be like, well, no, wait, this one pays this one pays that, this one pays this.
It's not a good
like, it's just not a good, it's not ethically that great. It's not a good way, it's not a good time. It's not a good use of your time. It's just easier to get the buyer what they want.
Right.
Oh, this house works perfect for them. I never even look at the commissions until I have to input it with my broker when we're doing compliance. Because that's the magic of the MLS. And what they've adopted is that you're going to get paid.
Yep.
Now, something's going to change. They're going to take that away.
Yeah.
So now realtors have to find out if they're getting paid and by how much by doing extra work. So do you think that's going to make things more or less ethical going forward?
Going forward, I would have to say less ethical, to be honest with you.
Totally.
Yeah.
Now agents aren't going to be looking out for their buyers right away, first thing, without even thinking, because most agents, they don't really think about their commission, the ones that are good at their job. If you're newer in the business, maybe you haven't had the skill of learning ethics yet, which is actually a skill, I believe.
Yeah.
When you're a newer agent, sometimes you are focused on commissions and stuff because you're new and you might be broke and you want to make sure you're not screwing up. If you've been doing it for a while, the commissions, they just come as you do your job.
Right.
You don't count on them ever because most of the work that you do is free anyway, and as long as you just do good work, eventually the commissions will come.
Yep.
And that's the way most agents work. I promise you. But because of the perception and the bad apples out there, the system's going to be broken and things are about to get a lot worse for buyers.
Yeah.
And unfortunately I think the ethical standards that we're used to are going to just plummet, and we're just going to be all focused on ourselves again.
Yeah, it is going to be a weird time, and it's going to be interesting to see exactly what happens with it. But like what you're saying, so with this, the buyers or the buyer's agent typically is not getting paid out of closing anymore, or that's being negotiated. Is that correct?
Well, the commissions have always been negotiated.
Right. Okay.
Or negotiable. And that's another thing too that was brought up. A lot of people they think, oh, okay, finally commissions are negotiable. They've always been negotiable.
Right.
You can as far as sellers are concerned.
Right.
With the buyers, they haven't had to pay a commission before. Now they're probably going to have to in some cases, because most agents are now going to get an actual buyer's representation agreement, which they should. It's always a should kind of thing. Now it's going to be kind of necessary if they want to get paid.
Yep.
And it basically defaults, hey, if they're not getting paid by the seller, the buyer's going to pay them.
Right.
And maybe that will make things even more difficult for buyers.
I think that's going to make things exactly where I was going to go with that. That's going to make things more difficult for buyers, because if your buyer has to come out of a 3% chunk, hypothetically, right? 3% chunk before they can even get into a house, say they're trying to get an FHA or a VA loan or anything like that.
Yeah.
That's an extra 3% tacked onto what they were anticipating paying.
That's like double what they were already had for a down payment if they're an FHA buyer.
Yeah, exactly. So like
just to pay their agent.
That can turn $18,000 payment into a $36,000 payment, just to make sure you have proper representation before you even buy the house.
Yeah. And most people don't, they don't see the value in an agent until they've had a good one.
Yep.
And until they've gone through the experience of actually purchasing a house. And, so there's a lot of perception out there that agents don't do shit, which is totally true in a lot of cases. Sometimes we do a lot.
Yeah.
Which you'll hardly ever see.
Right.
Because you're not always with an agent 24/7. It's usually just when you're showing properties, you actually see what the agent's doing.
Right.
There's a lot of work that they're doing in the background for their clients that unfortunately it doesn't even matter. I mean, it's like any industry out there.
Right.
Like in photography, people may think you just show up and take photos of a house and then they're like, where's my photos? And
There's
more
so
than
much
half
more
of
to that.
there's so much more work that goes into the delivery.
Like
right?
exactly what you're saying. Like honestly, like 5% of what I actually do with real estate photography is taking photos of a house.
Yeah.
I'm networking with agents, I'm setting appointments, I'm building systems, I'm building out all these different things that you don't see behind the back end of things. And then you go home and I have to find my editors, or I edit stuff myself, and then they edit back to me and I re-edit. And it's like me taking the picture is like literally 5%.
Yeah. And it's funny you say 5% because that's probably accurate with like showing properties for agents. Sometimes that's like 5 to 10, 15% of their job, but there's so much more that they do that people just don't see unless they're in those shoes and they're in that industry and they're in that career and they know everything that's involved to keep up with their license and to keep up with the compliance and to keep up with the marketing, the operations, the delivery, everything else.
Yeah.
So it's, and it's not unique. Real estate, being an agent, the only thing that's very unique about being a real estate agent is that it is such a low bar to entry when it comes to almost any business. And that's the most unique thing about it. And that's probably why so many agents get such a bad rap, because they haven't taken the time to really build something or enough to know that they have to commit to it. Because a lot of agents, when they're first starting, they're like halfway in. They're not really sure. They're going to see how it works out because it only takes a couple of $1,000 and maybe a month or two of preparation, and then bam, you're licensed. You got your full business ready to go.
Yeah,
your inventory's there in the MLS. When you're starting up a business as an agent, the bar is super low.
It is.
Yeah. So with that comes a lot of people that are halfway committed.
Sure. And I think you get that in a lot of industries, but like you're saying, specifically here, just because, like you said, you have to get licensed, you got to do all this stuff, just takes a couple months of work. If somebody wants to be an agent, like there's really not a lot of hoops to jump through. You do a fingerprint test. To start, right.
To start. There's a lot of hoops to jump through to stay.
Right. You have to stay up on your compliance and do all your hours and everything like that. But
you have to make a profit.
You have to actually do business, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what we saw at the beginning of 2021 and 2022 when the market was just flooded with agents. I know a lot of those people have actually left the industry already. But I think this is going to actually force more realtors out of the industry.
Sure. And which is fine. There's too many.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
But I do think, like a lot of people are, they're not exactly trying to do listings. They're just trying to bring buyers, and that's their living, right? And if you take away that means of living for somebody, they're either going to adapt or they're going to die off on it.
Yeah. And the reason why so many agents prefer to work with buyers is so that they don't have to have the commission talk. And that's if you want the real truth about why it's never been such an issue before is because unless you're taking listings, which is a way smaller percentage of the actual agents that are active out there, listings take some skill. They take some investment. They take some time to know what you're doing.
Right.
You just have to have a lot more skill to be a good listing agent than you do to open doors for buyers.
Right.
There's just more skill involved. Maybe there's less work, but there's more skill involved.
Sure.
And you also have to have the skill to sell. You actually have to sell yourself and your services, because The listing agent is the one who's negotiating the commission for everybody.
Yep.
Like they're the ones that are bringing in the money for their brokerage, the cooperating buyer's brokerage, the cooperating buyer's agent.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that are making the inventory happen for the National Association of Realtors to put on Realtor.com.
Right.
And all that stuff. So the listing agents do get paid the most because they bring the most value to the real estate marketplace.
Sure. But even like going into that, like you said, like there's like brokerage splits. You got to pay for your transaction coordinator. You got to pay for your team. You got to pay for your leads. You got to pay for your resources. Like just because you see 3% on a piece of paper does not mean that your buyer or seller agent just get that 3%. A lot of that just is a trickle down effect.
Yeah. It doesn't go to the agent. It goes to the brokerage.
Right.
And then the brokerage
pays.
and the agent, they have their own splits or their own arrangements depending on every brokerage is different.
Right.
And every time of the year is different. So, yeah, the 6%, 5%, whatever people charge these days. And that's another thing too, that there's this conception out there that the real estate standard, it's a monopoly, that it's 6%. It's whatever.
Right.
It's whatever you agree upon.
When you agree on it.
Just a lot of people have seemed to come accustomed to that 6% just because it's something to kind of set a benchmark at. What we should be about here seems fair. That's what history is very comfortable with. That's what agents like don't really balk at much if they're getting 2 to 3%,
right? Depending
on the price points. If you're selling a trailer in a trailer park, for $20,000 to $50,000, sometimes those percentages are actually like 10, 20%. Like they'll charge a flat fee, but if you look at the percentage, it's way higher,
right?
And sometimes when you're selling multi-million-dollar properties,
sometimes it's 0.5%.
It doesn't have to be 6%,
right?
You can as long as you're making a decent living, you can charge 4% on like a luxury listing and offer the buyer's agent 2%. Everyone's totally cool with that.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, it's a lot of money. We're good. We're doing our job.
Yeah.
It's not a slap in the face. You don't always need to charge 6. You don't always need to charge. Sometimes you need to charge a lot more.
Yep.
Sometimes you need to charge a lot less.
Yep.
It depends on the quality of service that you're providing and what people are comfortable with, what you agree on, because everything's negotiable in this world.
Right.
Hey, quick commercial break here. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I really do appreciate it. If you want to give back, let me help you buy a house, or I can help you sell a house. It's the only way I make money when I'm not investing in real estate. I don't make money on this podcast or the events I do, but I do make money only when I help people buy and sell houses. So if you're looking for your next investment and you're here in North Idaho, I want to help you personally. If you are not in North Idaho, I can still help you out. I have a vast network of referral partners all across the country in Keller Williams Realty, and I can find the right real estate investor savvy agent for you so you don't have to. It doesn't cost you a thing. Thank you for your support. Back to the show.
Let's bring this down to like a base level though real quick. So like you said, like, I mean, if somebody lists a trailer, $50,000 trailer, right? Hypothetically, let's say there's a 6%. What is 6% of 50,000?
It's $3,000 total.
$3,000 total? That's good math. That's quick.
Yeah.
So $3,000 total, right? So I mean, if somebody's trying to buy a trailer for that, and then they have to come with an extra $1,500, I mean, that's not a lot to that, but that definitely scales once you get into $300,000-$400,000 houses.
Yeah, but think about that. If you take a 6% listing, the industry average on a mobile home for $50,000, and the listing agent is charging 6, and then they're sharing half of that with a cooperating buyer, and then the brokers are sharing half of that. So like an agent, and then after their expenses, they're really only making a couple $100.
Yeah, if that.
When you really chop it all up. And that's why, like on trailer listings, we have to have we got to charge $5,000, you know, or whatever. Like if it's a $20,000 thing, like just to recoup our marketing, and because the trailers actually sometimes they're more work than a $600,000 home.
Yeah,
and when I say sometimes, I mean like almost always.
Pretty much always,
because you're dealing with a clientele that are way more needier. You're dealing with a park manager that you need to go through an approval process. When you're dealing with trailers, it's so much more work.
Yeah,
and you typically
more work,
get paid way less. And on the opposite side, when you're selling a $600,000 home, those are the bread and butter, what agents love, because typically you're dealing with a client that can afford it,
right? And
they typically respect agents and professionals a little bit more than the average person, because they know, I don't know, people with a little bit of money but not too much. are my favorite people to deal with because they typically have respect and hard work ethics,
Right?
And they're just easier to deal with, and they typically don't balk at a commission too much because they just want to move on, sell their house.
I get it.
And typically, when you're in that, it doesn't. And bottom line, whether you're getting charged 6% or 5%, it doesn't really matter. It only matters on like how much money can you get for the house based off the agent that's representing you and how they handle the negotiations and stuff. Because you can hire a cheap agent if you have a $500,000-$600,000 home, a flat fee service where you're paying $900 to get it on the MLS, and then maybe paying 2% to a buyer's agent. You could do that.
Yep.
But you probably won't get the same level of service, and you probably won't sell the home for as much as you could with an experienced agent.
Right. It's like going to Kia and expecting a Ferrari.
Ooh. Yeah.
No offense to Kia, they make fine automobiles. They're not Ferraris.
Yeah. So anyway, that's I don't know if this is a rant or not, but I just want to put it out there that like I feel like this industry is just going to get worse.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, just because you're starting to break a good thing. There's always bad apples anywhere.
Right.
But you're breaking a pretty good thing. And trust me, the National Association of Realtors, fuck them. I hate them. I mean, they sold us out a long time ago when they started selling us back leads, Realtor.com, and they claim to be this great organization, but they're for profit and they're just a bunch of fuckheads. But they do have a good system for like making it very easy for a buyer to get a house and be represented.
Right.
Now it's going to get tough.
Yeah.
Which I'm fine with because I'm an investor, I'm a realtor, I can be creative, we're going to be fine. Right. I just feel bad for these buyers that just want to buy a house. And you've had society basically just making that more and more impossible.
Sure.
As time goes on.
And you run a real estate team, Nick, obviously. Have you talked to your team about the changes, and what are you doing going forward to kind of negate these changes or adapt to the situation?
So I've been in Europe for the last couple of weeks and haven't really talked much about it with Joe and Sabra. Our team left, so we had a lot of great team members that a couple of them basically retired from our team, started their own thing.
Yeah,
Tyler and Caitlin, totally, we're all good there.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing now. They can run their own thing. There's no bad blood. They're great people. We're still friends. We still do the REIs together.
Yeah.
But right now we don't have a team.
Sure. But you guys are going to eventually have buyers for projects, right? So I mean,
we always have buyers. So right now I'm dealing with buyers. Joe's dealing with buyers. Saber's dealing with buyers. We will be recruiting more talent here soon. We just recruited an awesome chick. Audrey, but she's now moving.
Okay.
So she's leaving our team now. We just trained her up like over the last month or so, but now she's moving to New Mexico.
Okay.
So there's a position open. Anyone out there who's a realtor and who's not an idiot and who's also an investor savvy kind of person, I want to talk to you.
Yeah, specifically in North Idaho, right?
North Idaho,
yeah. But but what I'm saying is, like, I know you've been in Europe the last couple of weeks. We'll talk about that a little bit, by the way.
Sure.
But so I know you and Joe and Sabra are all going to be bringing buyers to the table. Do you have a plan yet on how you're going to be doing this?
So in July is when things are going to come off the MLS.
Gotcha.
And we're just waiting for guidance from our brokerage on how they want us to handle things. For now, we're doing business as normal.
I love it.
Because we don't want to make any assumptions. And as long as we're doing a good job for our clients, we're not really worried about not getting. Most of the work that we do is free anyway.
Sure.
Like almost the majority of everything we do.
Yep.
Typically when we do sell houses, though, we get paid, and that's what we still anticipate is going to happen.
Yeah.
So we're not really worried about it. We're not really worried about it, but we're definitely going to, whatever the new things that our brokerage wants to do to make sure that they can still capture their income and keep the doors open, we're going to do.
Cool.
And it's just something, though, I thought we should comment on because there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that think that commissions are going to come down and that home prices are going to come down. And unfortunately, that's it's very unlikely.
Yeah, that seems very unlikely to me too. I'm not a realtor, but that sounds like something that won't happen.
Yeah. And anybody who's going to sell their house, most of them know that the commissions are negotiable because it doesn't take a whole lot of research to just find out what's they can go to Google and say, what's the real estate commission if I'm selling my house? And they'll see all these things. Oh, it's negotiable. You can go to a flat fee service, go to a normal brokerage. It's always negotiable. Expect to pay about 6%.
Right.
And then when you're meeting with your realtor, that's usually a conversation that comes up before you sign up.
Yeah.
You say, I charge this and this is why.
Right.
Because I've so much is going here. This is what we're doing here. And then they might squeamish a little bit. Well, are you negotiable a little bit? And blah, 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 blah. Everything's a little bit different.
Right.
Everything's negotiable, but it doesn't mean that commissions are going to come down just because the news says so.
Mm-hmm. I saw an interesting thing happen to me last week. I was shooting a house out in Sagal. The real estate agent was there. It was already listed. I was just getting some extra content for them. The agent was there and the seller was there, and the seller was trying to negotiate after signing the contract about getting commissions.
Oh, how'd that go?
They were both pretty heated at each other.
Oh, tell us more. Tell us more.
I'm not saying names here because that's not what I'm doing. But
yeah, that's okay.
I was upstairs.
Was he bringing up the news or something?
I imagine that's what it was. I was upstairs, they were downstairs, but I could hear him saying, it's just a 0.5%. You're saying you can't do with a 0.5%.
0.5%.
Yeah. And then the agent's like, we signed the contract on this months ago. I'm not voluntarily going to give you a less of a commission, and I've paid for more marketing to come out here today. Like, I'm paying for this.
Oh, so it's a listing that's they've already been trying to sell.
Yeah. It's already been live.
Gotcha.
But
yeah.
Anyway, it was just
that's going to happen. I mean, that's not too unusual for sellers to want to negotiate their commission again. We've done it,
sure,
and it's fine. We usually give discounts to clients that have used us before.
I think that's great.
That's usually and yeah. So clients that have used us before, we usually give a little bit of a discount. Depends on the price point too of the place. Sure. Like we just have to make a certain amount of money, but also we do our best to make sure that the seller is going to get the most amount of proceeds, and we're going to try to do better than any other agent.
Right.
And just do what they want, which is a house sold. And that's mostly what they want. They don't want a lower commission. They just want their house sold.
Right.
That's above commissions when you look at studies. They want a listing agent to sell their house.
Interesting you say that, because we have our house on the market right now. And in my mind, I'm not like worried about seller commission, what you're getting or anything like that. I'm like, I just want the thing sold.
Yeah. Interesting, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. You may hear that and you're like, not true. But until you've experienced it, you're not worried as much about the fees. It's more about, can you do the job and sell this thing? Can I look at the bottom line? How much are we walking away with here? Am I comfortable with that?
Yeah.
That's, are you doing well or not? And even if you're losing money, sometimes you're still like, yeah, I got to sell the house.
Yeah.
I'm moving.
This has got to go. We got to end this.
So yeah, welcome to America, where things cost money here and there. And I just came back from Europe, and things aren't free there either.
Yeah, this is a good time to segue into that. So you just got back from Europe. You were in a 2-week sabbatical with your team, doing a culture building team.
Yeah, well, I was mostly with my wife.
Mostly with your wife? Okay.
Yeah, for the majority of the vacation, the first week we were driving all over Europe.
Cool.
We flew into Barcelona, Spain. And then we went up to Geneva, Switzerland. Okay. We drove through France into Switzerland, and this is the first time I've ever been to Europe too. So I got to drive all over the country there. And then we went up to Frankfurt, Germany, from Geneva. I got to drive on the Autobahn and drive. Oh, okay. I got used to kilometers.
Okay,
so I was going about 175 to 180 kilometers an hour for
probably about 100 miles an hour, right?
110, 112. Yeah. For like 2 hours straight, which was awesome. Yeah. Every time I had to get over, because sometimes people would be flying behind me, like, oh, gotta move out of the way. Here comes a crazy person. Yeah. As if I'm not crazy enough.
Going pretty dang fast.
So that was a cool experience. And then we went back down through France, saw a couple of different big cities there, and then back into Spain, spent the next week in Spain.
Nice.
And then flew out from there.
Cool.
but what I learned was I was just so grateful to live in this country because the culture is just different. Obviously, in every country,
Sure.
like France had a way different culture than Germany. Germany had a way different culture, not that much, but like Switzerland,
Sure.
that was their own thing. And then Spain, definitely a different culture there. That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But what was very common amongst all of that was just the pure size of everything.
Okay.
Like the coffees were super small. All the vehicles, super small.
Yeah.
All the roads and lanes, smaller.
Yikes.
And the people, smaller.
Smaller. Yeah.
The French, weak, nasty people.
You heard it here first. Okay.
Yeah. Loved the Germans.
Yeah.
They were very clean.
Uh-huh.
Their city's very clean, very polite,
Okay.
very friendly, cheap meals, which I really enjoyed Germany. I want to go back.
Yeah.
Switzerland was also very very neat.
Okay.
Especially in Geneva where we were. That's where all like the banking fraud is and
Okay.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
The
And
offshore banks.
you bought something special in Switzerland, didn't you?
Oh yeah. I got a legit Swiss Army knife in Switzerland, made in
Nice.
Switzerland.
Okay.
And I immediately cut myself right here when I was showing my kids over the FaceTime. As I closed it, I had my finger in it.
That'll snap you.
Yeah, so I learned about knife safety.
Yeah. Spring-loaded knives, huh? Cool.
But it came in great handy throughout the entire trip. Even the little cork thing, opening up wine all the time and stuff, is such a good investment.
Nice.
I highly recommend going out to Switzerland to get your Swiss Army knives because you can't get these on Amazon for half the price.
Oh, you can't do that. It's
Yeah,
preposterous. You have to
you can.
buy a ticket for your entire family to go to Switzerland
To pay double.
to pay double.
It's all about the experience.
You got to experience of Switzerland. You got our Swiss Army knife. So yeah, what I wanted to talk about while you were on vacation was how were you conducting business? I know Sabre was still, I'm sure, working.
Yeah.
But did any balls drop? Anything break while you guys were gone?
I'm sure it did. I didn't know. But I mean, so if anybody actually put the effort out there to leave me a voicemail or send me an email, I got the message. But I wasn't getting text messages or phone calls.
Yeah, I realized that right away.
Yeah. So and I never got them either. Yeah. So I usually get like 10 to 20 text messages a day. Usually a lot of calls. 2 weeks didn't get any.
That's pretty nice.
So
I like that.
Unless I was on the Wi-Fi calling, then I could get some incoming calls and stuff. But yeah, it was poorly planned. I bought this SIM card for like that. I just didn't really realize until we were there. Oh, I'm not getting any incoming calls or text message. I thought my text message were just going to kind of build up, and then as I got service, like Wi-Fi calling enabled, then I would get a load of text messages. Sure, but they just never came. Yeah. So, nothing blew up. It was actually perfect timing. Good. Perfect timing of the year. And for a few days, I started the vacation before the rest of my team. So for the first few days, like Sabre got to monitor a lot of stuff. Yeah. And then like we had your wife manage the transaction. Thankfully.
I appreciate
gas leaks and stuff. So that's and if there were any other balls that were dropped, and if you're aware of it, I'm sorry. But business is great because business, unlike family and everything like that, is like a rubber ball and it could just bounce back. Yeah. So you can totally drop the ball. It will come back. Yeah. You just got to do your job.
You can always just get more business.
You can always just get more business. So I'm sure I pissed people off and had lost opportunities, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah. It's part of the game, man. Like you can't please everybody. And if you could, that sounds awful at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what else could I do? I don't know. Call Cricket and see if, hey, all those text messages, can I get those?
Yeah, you got those texts.
That way I can have a horrible time. I mean, I'm sure most of those people got their issues figured out.
Sure. I did. I texted you and I didn't get anything back and I figured it out. So, hey, okay.
Oh, what'd you need?
It was with one of the loans we were closing. I just had some questions about one of the appraisals or something. And then I just employed my wife to help me.
Gotcha. Sorry about that.
I don't know how to do any of that shit, and she does.
Yeah. So anyway, I want to just chat a little bit about like What I was thinking about this morning, how unfortunate it is that like I feel like our culture in general is shifting to this European culture where a lot of people in Europe, they don't own homes.
Okay.
It's gotten a little bit too expensive there, and they kind of lost that. I feel like they don't have that same spirit here in America
Sure.
of that, that dream life.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in other ways they have that, but like when you buy a house, it's a liability at first, but over time it becomes an asset.
Mm-hmm.
Give it a couple decades, and that house, the payment will be cheaper than it would be to rent by far.
Oh yeah.
You give it a couple decades, and eventually that mortgage will be paid off, and that house can take care of you. But it takes a lot of maintenance.
It does.
When you buy a house, it's a huge commitment. It's a liability. People will call it your biggest asset you'll ever purchase, but at first it's a liability.
Sure.
Unless it's making you money right away. It's not. I'm not talking investments here. I'm talking if you buy a home to live in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge financial commitment. It's a huge burden. It's a huge inconvenience, and it's typically, like lately, it's more expensive than renting.
Yep.
It's not that convenient. It takes a lot of dedication, a lot of time, a lot of maintenance. You can't always go to the bars because sometimes you have to clean out the gutters.
Yeah.
And through time, you just give it a couple decades, and with all that hard work, it really pays you back.
Yes.
But that's something renters will never experience if they always rent forever.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to have something that will take care of them when they're older.
Sure.
And it's just like having kids. It's so convenient not to have kids.
Yeah.
When, that's a new thing these days. It's like, dude, I don't ever want kids. I don't want that kind of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're older, who's going to take care of them?
Yeah.
Just give it a couple decades with kids. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of commitment. It's a liability for sure.
Oh yeah.
But the rewards are immense, and they're unspeakable.
Right.
When you have kids, that someday, if you do good, and if you really put the effort in there, sometimes they'll want to take care of you and be your friend, and help you, with that retirement transition,
right,
or be there when you fall,
right,
those kind of things. If you don't take the time to do the hard things and just give it a couple decades of hard work, you won't get to experience that. So I'm afraid for this new generation that they don't want to own a house. They don't want kids.
Mm-hmm.
When they're older, they're not going to have anything. They're not going to have anyone to take care of them, and no assets either.
Yeah.
And it's a scary thing because they're just going to be a slave to the society and to price increases and to inflation. And they're just going to live lives of complete utter misery until they eventually hang themselves.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I don't think everyone's going to kill themselves, but
I'm just
but like culturally, like I guess it makes sense because I guess the United States we're a capitalist environment, right? Like we want things, we want toys, we want all the things. It might not be that way over there.
Well, and you can look at it that way, or we like to build stuff.
Mm-hmm. We like to have other people build stuff because it's cheaper.
Sure, there's that too. But when you're in a different type of society, your mindset, it's all about consumption.
Sure.
And less contributing in general.
Sure.
I'm talking total generals here, and this is why I'm a fan of capitalism, because in order to do well
mm-hmm.
in the society, you have to offer a lot of value to society,
mm-hmm.
and it doesn't go unnoticed over time.
I will say I see that a lot over in the United States as well. Like most people don't provide value. Most people are leeching off the system.
Sure.
Right? The amount of
look at my sister. Look at my sister.
Yeah. Yes, but like what I'm saying, yeah, most people they just want everything handed to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it does take a special type of person to really work at it and earn your keep.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's the bar, right? Like, it takes a special person to earn your keep. Like, that should be the standard.
It should be the standard, and you're right about that. Like what you just said. Ooh, what you just said right there.
What you just said.
You should rewind what he just said. Because the new standard has dwindled.
Mm-hmm.
And the new standard these days is just pure convenience.
Yeah.
And that's what people default to. What's easy? What's easy?
Yeah.
I just want to do whatever's easy. And I see that a lot with the younger generation. There's a few oddballs that actually want to work.
Yeah.
And actually they just have this unexplainable drive that they can't really articulate what's going on in them, but they want to build.
Yeah.
And they want to build a future, and they want to do, and they might be all over the place and scatterbrained, but you can just tell some people just have that thing in them where they maybe not know that they want to contribute to society, but that's what they're doing.
Right.
You know, and just some people just have that wired into them. Maybe it could be a childhood thing where they just like were completely neglected and they have this chip on their shoulder and they want to prove to everybody that they're worth something.
Sure.
There's some of that too. I didn't know we get into philosophy here, but
No, it's all interesting, right? Because like if you take any number of population, there's going to be people who are motivated. There's going to be people who are not motivated. You have a big enough population, and eventually you're just gonna have serial killers and rapists, and like they're.
Oh yeah.
Like,
well, that's always
that's
fun.
what happens with people, right? Like the more people you have, the more diversity you have in between that person group. But we're so surrounded with our investor friends, like this is our entire world.
Yeah. And when you're building something great, I mean, who has the time to go out there and rape and murder?
I don't
either. I wish I had the time. Like a good old Viking. I'm just kidding. Don't take that the wrong way, everybody.
I think what Nick means to say is he wishes he had the time, and he's going to stop the sentence right there. Like the free time to pursue
whatever,
and if
rape and pillage.
I don't endorse that, but yeah, free time is nice too.
Yeah. So anyway, what do you think about this settlement? From a non-realtor's perspective, I'm sure you're going to have a more clear idea about what's going on, because I'm going to admit that I'm going to be biased for sure because it's my industry.
Yeah.
But you got your toes in. You work with agents. You know the system better than the average folk. What do you think?
That's a good question, Nick. I don't really know what to think of it yet, because like you said, like a lot of things are just kind of starting to really fall down the pipeline. It will be interesting to see how everything's handled going forward in the future. If it's on a team-by-team basis, or if the whole, realtors as a whole come up with a system that makes sense for everybody. I don't know. I do see that if these fees are not paid by a seller, they will be paid by a buyer, because a buyer's agent needs compensation and will not work for free.
Yeah.
Which,
or there just won't be buyer's agents.
Or there just won't be buyer's agents.
Like in other countries.
Yeah.
Yeah, where a buyer just goes from one brokerage to the other based off the listing that they have.
Oh, and that could happen.
And that's very possible. Yeah.
Let's break that down a little bit. I didn't know that happened in other countries. So how are other countries, like, how's turnover for realtors? Or
I don't know. I just know that in most other countries, they don't have this beautiful system of buyers being able to get free representation.
Yeah.
So and that maybe that's part of why there's such low home ownership in other countries.
Could be.
And it's reserved only for the wealthy and that kind of stuff. But I just believe that home ownership is a good thing. Because you can start building routines, and it's hard, and it is a liability, and it's more expensive at first. But I believe it's good for the human brain to have some sort of routine and basis in life, and some sort of a hard commitment.
Sure.
Because if you don't have some 30-year commitment or marriage or something like that, people can be pretty lost.
Sure.
If they wake up every day and they're, I guess I can do whatever.
Right.
I mean, I've seen a lot of young travelers that they're not tied down into a relationship, and they're not, they don't have like this home base, and they can just, and I'm thinking in my mind about three different people. When I look into their eyes, they don't look happy.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's no fulfillment.
Yeah, and that's just my guess, or my theory is that if you don't have some hard commitment in life that you're working towards every day, and it may sound stupid, you just own a house that you're making payments on. It's more than that. You're just maintaining. You've got a place to call home, some sort of comfort, because I mean, if you're in the wild and stripped of your clothes, all you really have that you want is some sort of a shelter.
Yep.
That you can call home, and then it's about trying to find food every day.
Yep.
And then when you have those two things, then you can go be creative.
Those are basic human survival needs, right? You need,
Yeah,
you
it's
need
a real-
shelter and food.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to disagree with you. I do think home ownership is a great thing, of course. Obviously, what I love about it is, so say a renter has been there for 10 years, landlord decides to sell their house. That's a big freaking process for a tenant who's been involved for 10 years in the house, thinking like, I thought I just lived here,
Oh yeah, it's sad. I see it a lot.
Yeah, I see it a lot too, and it's very unfortunate, but it's hard. I get it. But you choose your hard. Like, okay, you might have a little less payments, a little less responsibility in a rental, but it's unpredictable when the tenant or when the owner will sell, when you're going to get evicted. It's unpredictable. They can cancel your lease and say, hey, we need you out at the end of the month. Cool. I guess I'll go find someplace else to live.
Yeah, the anxiety gets tapered down when you're not expecting that at any time you could be kicked out.
Yep.
Which, but if people really were aware of how common it is, I think people would veer towards home ownership a little bit more.
Sure.
For peace of mind too, because like one of the best things about like me living at my house is that I don't have some other person out there raising my payment every year.
Yep.
And telling me that I can't have a dog.
Yeah.
Or, if I want to paint my house a different color, I don't have to get permission or like negotiate, like, am I paying for some bit or what? Like,
right.
It's just nice. It's nice to have freedom. And people who don't know any better may see that as the opposite of freedom. Oh, you're stuck with a house for 30 years making this payment? How horrible. You must be in jail in your mind. No, not at all.
Right.
Like, we all need somewhere to live. We chose this. Unfortunately for renters, they don't have as much freedom as they think.
Right.
At all. Can't even fucking get a dog without permission.
Right, and having to pay an extra $200
I mean, this is
fee.
This is America. This is planet Earth. Get a fucking dog. But
My wife
in
doesn't
order
want
to
a
do
dog.
that, well, I'm just trying to say, like, I believe people should have the freedom to do things like that.
Sure.
But most people don't.
Yeah.
And home ownership is going below 50% in this country.
Interesting.
So that means almost the majority of people are now not even going to have the freedom to just get a dog if they want. And I know not everybody wants a dog, but what I'm trying to say is,
it's the freedom. I get it.
you're not that free when you're a tenant.
Right.
Not as free as you think.
Pretty strict on things. And I will just say, you touched base on that just a little bit too, Nick. We are capitalists here, and we love spending, right? Like, people enjoy toys, and they enjoy stuff more than they enjoy responsibility.
Oh, for sure. But once you get a taste of responsibility, it can be addicting, and it can be very rewarding.
It's so addicting.
It can be very rewarding.
Yeah.
People just don't know how good discipline can be.
And I don't think they will ever figure that out.
Peasants.
I didn't say that. Nick did.
I know. We joke. We joke on this podcast.
We do.
Please don't take this out of context, please. Go ahead. Take it out of context. I don't give a shit. Fuck you. Anyway.
Take that out of context. He actually meant a nice thing there.
I meant a nice thing for a second. Then I took it back.
I took it out of context, and I took it out of context again. Do you have any final closing thoughts on this one, Nick? I think we've covered the NAR, National Association of Realtors.
Yeah, we didn't really cover it in depth, but I get pissed off when I hear all this misinformation. On Bigger Pockets, the Market podcast, which I love, and I really respect that Dave Meyer, that host. He had this lady from the I think it was the New York Times or something like that, talk all about the NAR, and it was the only time I've ever commented on YouTube and just said this is complete shit. I've never been one of those people to like negatively comment on something, but I lost so much respect for that podcast because they brought on not an expert to talk about a certain industry and just gave all these false facts.
Gotcha.
And it was really sad. So it's sad for me to kind of just know that people's intentions, I guess, are good, but until you really know an industry, just shut your mouth. Like I'm not gonna tell doctors, how much they should be charging for what they're doing. and then, you know, try to create a mandate. Anyway, I don't know where I'm going with that, but it's just, I just think if people don't like something, maybe just choose to not do it and stop trying to control everything.
Yeah.
Stop trying to control, you know, how people operate. Just stay out of it. But the whole lawsuit thing, bottom line, it's just money grab.
Yeah.
You know, these attorneys are making 20-25% of almost $1 billion when you add up all the companies they're suing.
Yeah.
So that's where the incentive is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where this all stems from. It's attorneys just getting money.
Yeah, a lot of problems actually end up like that. Just attorneys wanting money or a money grab.
And then here's an opportunity.
Yep, something one way or another. We can capitalize on this.
So capitalism, it's great most of the time, but there's always the bad apples in capitalism, and sometimes that's class action lawsuits.
Yeah, it's true.
That's just my opinion. And I'm very opinionated about this because I'm very biased, and I know I can be wrong about plenty of things.
Yeah.
So let's leave it at that.
Yeah, I love it. Well, if you love this episode and you love not taking things out of context like us, we have a couple different places you can go to leave us 5-star reviews. There's Apple Podcasts and there's Spotify, YouTube. Thanks to all the people who comment on our YouTube. Dave and Ryan specifically, we love you.
Dave, Ryan, thanks.
We get a lot of people listening to the podcast, by the way. Yeah. So really, like, thank you all for listening and enjoying what we say. We try to provide value and be funny and just be real and authentic for you. So thank you for listening, and we'll hope to see you shortly.
Thanks, guys. Sorry for saying F you earlier. I was just joking. Bye.
I'm just kidding, America. You know I love you.
What's up, North Idaho people?
Hello.
Hey, we've got an amazing real estate seminar coming to Coeur d'Alene here later this year. We want to tell you about it so that you'll hurry up and buy tickets.
Yes, get your tickets. The amazing Kathy Fecky is flying in. AJ Osborne, the king of self-storage, is flying in.
Steve Rosenberg, y'all know him, he's muscly. Brad Chandler, changed your life. Tom Wheelwright, man of the hour. Get a free book too when you sign up. Quickly, do it before the end of the month and you'll get a free book.
Thank you so much for checking out the Investor Shed podcast. If you enjoyed your time, make sure to leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow along on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at The Investor Shed for shorts and promos about each episode. Do you want to be a guest or know someone who has great real estate investing advice and stories? Reach out to us at theinvestorshed@gmail.com.